So have you ever been caught up in a thought that you really want to release? Has your mind ever just been spinning around on something and you're like, I really want a fast forward button. I want to fast forward 6 months because I know it'll be different then, but I'm just caught in this cycle of thinking and I just want to release it. And it's not that easy. And then we hear these sayings like, change your thinking, change your life, and you're like, yes, I want to, but how? Well, this is just something that I'm going through, so I'll just share with you the life cycle of a thought. Thoughts have a beginning, a middle, and an end. They have a life cycle. So a thought is born, or it's created, it comes into your mind, and then it stays active as long as you give it attention. And then eventually, that thought will dissolve. It will evaporate. It will be complete. A thought is complete when you have balance and harmony about it, when you kind of return to neutral. So you can think of a seesaw or a scale. As long as there's attachment, as long as there's active energy, focus, attention being placed on that thought, then that thought is alive, it's active, it has influence in your life. But when you return to balance and harmony, then you're at a neutral place. So here's a demonstration. I want you to think about a type of cuisine, a type of food that you normally never think about. So it could be Peruvian food, Norwegian food, Nigerian food, just something that you normally don't have in your mind, in your thought. So before I ask you to do that, that thought was passive. It had no influence or effect on your life at all. But if I tell you, hey, a group of us are going out for that type of food, do you want to come along? Now you have some active thoughts, right? Like, do they serve meat? What kind of vegetables? What spices do they use? Will I find anything I like on the menu? Do I once knew somebody from that country? I mean, right, so your thoughts become active. You have some attachment to whatever it is you're thinking about. And it's kind of like a balloon. When you're actively filling a balloon, it expands. Or it's like pressing a gas pedal on a vehicle. As long as you're giving that fuel to the vehicle, it's moving in a direction. So, are there any thoughts that you would like to complete? Maybe somebody in your life has changed, and it would be good to adapt to their new way of being and not hold them to the old definitions that you had of them. Maybe there's a relationship that it's just time to let it go. Maybe it's run its course, served both of you. Maybe it's time to just say goodbye. Or maybe you've had a disagreement with a boss or a coworker. Maybe there's something you're carrying around, even a story from childhood that's just no longer serving you, and you think, you know what, my life would be enhanced if I could just complete that thought, release it, let it dissolve. The heavier a thought is, the harder it is to let it go and return to balance. So the more attached we are to a person or to an activity, it's kind of like the more hooks it has in us, or the more contact points. So you can think of it like a spider web. If you're in a spider web of thought, you can get yourself out of that web, but you might still feel those little silk threads on you as long as that thought is still having some activity in your life. So how to dissolve thought, how to complete thought. These are just some things I'm working with now, so I'm sharing them with you. And the first one is illuminate the story. Illuminate the story. Don't just tell the story over and over again in the same rut. Instead, ask for guidance, ask for illumination. This is how we turn experience into wisdom. We have to actually be open to learning something. Like, what can I learn from this situation? And the learning, it's usually about me. Usually about self-awareness, some way I am being in the world, some way I could be more positive and productive and fulfilled. It's not about changing the other people. And this is what we do with sacred texts and ancient stories, for example. We continue to tell the stories in ancient texts because we learn from them. We shine light on those stories, and we continue to progress in consciousness by what we learn. So we can take time for purpose and meaning to be revealed, but that's what we want to seek. We just want to continue to seek purpose and meaning. So here's an example. I have a friend, and she went through a breakup, and she was in therapy for 2 years, and she wasn't making any progress. And when I saw her, she just says, I'm stuck. I'm just stuck. I'm not progressing. I can't get past this. And she was still telling the same stories that she was telling 2 years prior. So I did recommend she talk to somebody I work with named Linda Starr, and after 6 months with some changes of techniques and changes in approach, she made so much progress, and she's really thriving now. She's in a great relationship and remodeled her house, and she's just a delightful light in this world. So we don't want to get stuck in a story creating a rut that's unhelpful. Here's another way. Feel your feelings. Feel your feelings without indulging them. And what I mean is recognize, honor, acknowledge feelings, but don't just throw fuel on the fire. Like, don't just compound the feelings. I've found that feelings are like a child that wants attention, and the feelings will just keep pestering you until you just acknowledge them, right? So this has worked for me. I know that a lot of us share human emotions. Fear, for example. We are all afraid of some of the same things. We're afraid of being unloved. We're afraid of being abandoned. We're afraid of being stifled. We're afraid of not being valued. And we can feel that fear starting in the body. You know, the constriction, the heart beating faster, the tensing up. So if I'm aware of what's going on in my body, then I can just say, I see you, fear. I feel you, fear. I hear you, fear. I just acknowledge it, and that just seems to help it dissolve. So again, I'm not compounding the story. With feelings, we don't need to blame somebody for our feelings. We don't need to justify I don't need to tell a story about how I am so justified in feeling how I feel because I'm right and the other people are wrong, and you know, I just get caught up in that. It just helps. I see you, fear. I see that fear is here. And that just allows me to release it in some way. Another approach, avoid victimhood. It kind of goes along with the feelings. It's easy to find people who will justify us in our complaints, in our criticisms, in our justifications. And it's really not helpful when people just justify, oh, you were so right and they were so wrong. I mean, you don't want somebody to necessarily contradict you. You want somebody to listen and, you know, be compassionate, but not just throwing fuel on the fire. So we want to, again, honor our feelings respectfully, but without getting caught up in my criticisms, my justifications, my blame. So another technique here, work your practices. You know, challenges are a great way to learn. Challenges are a great way that we progress. We can also progress just by being in the silence and getting, you know, great insight and illumination. But most of the common ways we learn is we face some kind of challenge in life. And so just working the practices to build and strengthen your spiritual muscles. Just think of it as going to the spiritual gym. So what is it you like to do? Journaling, walking the labyrinth, saying affirmations, drumming. There's so many options. Soul collage is something people do. So is there anything that you would like to enhance in your spiritual practice? One way to enhance life is to stop doing something that's not working anymore. So you may have done something that was really helpful and valuable and effective for you, but maybe it's just not really elevating you as like it did before. It's okay to let it go. It's okay to try something new. So sometimes we can just say, we've done that. We got what we needed out of it. So here's an example. I was recently, Friday night, with a new group of people that I'd never met before. They were my friends' neighbors. And so a lot of the talk initially was around the homeowners association and the projects they were doing, and there was one particular woman who was very intense about a contractor, and she was complaining a lot. She was very loud. There was a lot of curse words in her conversation. Withdrawal is a spiritual practice sometimes. Withdrawing from a situation can be a spiritual practice. So Jesus showed us this. Jesus would go out away from people just to rest and reflect and recharge. So when conscience says, removing yourself may be the best course of action, that, again, spiritual practice. Release attachment. Release attachment. What gets attached? The ego, our personal self, our local self, our human limitation. And we don't want to blame our human self for doing what it does. That's just what the ego is going to do. But we can, again, just acknowledge it. Just be aware of it. So that aspect of you that wants to defend your personal self, it's not bad or wrong. It's just doing what it does. So again, just acknowledge with conscience, with awareness. This is my human self trying to defend or protect my human personality. This is wanting me to blame or justify or criticize or attack or flee or whatever my response to conflict is. Again, just acknowledging it, shine light on it. So rise above and seek below the personal level, the level of human limitations, and connect with eternal consciousness and oneness. And we learned this from the 4 agreements. The second agreement is don't take anything personally. So what we're doing on the spiritual path, we're transcending the personal self. We're all in this life together. And so we are oneness in action. We're oneness in action. I recently learned an indigenous greeting. It is, I am you and you are me. It's a way that some indigenous people greet each other. I am you and you are me. It's similar to Namaste, the God in me sees the God in you. And again, it's just a way to acknowledge that we're one humanity. We're all having a human experience. And again, we're all in this together, so I don't have to take everything personally. I can look for the greater meaning and the purpose. Seek wholeness and integrity. Stand in your experience with integrity, meaning wholeness. Now, sometimes in life, we come apart. Sometimes we feel broken. And that's beautiful. That's beautiful because that is the time when we are reborn. When we're fragmented, broken, feel cracked open, that is when we are going to get reborn, emerge from the shell, rise from the ashes like a phoenix. So we can accept what is without labeling it as bad or wrong or less than. It is what it is, and again, we don't have to get caught up in blame and judgment. So for me, the key is loving the whole self, like loving my whole self, the whole of the human experience. I can at least accept the human experience. I don't necessarily have to celebrate everything in life, but just accept that I'm having a human experience. Sometimes that involves some suffering and pain, and that's okay. Because I'm learning, I'm progressing, I'm open, I'm refining my soul. So for me, one key was overcoming negative self-talk. I used to look at my life and think, oh, I really took a detour. I was really on a side road there. I had this winding path, I wasted time. And then I remember just this moment of realization that if I believe that God is everywhere, and I do believe that God is everywhere, then I could never be somewhere where God is not. So wherever my path took me, even if it seemed like winding roads and detours and side excursions, God was there too. So We can never be off of the divine map. You're always on the divine map wherever you are. There's no way to be outside of oneness. Now, sometimes we do feel separated. Sometimes we do feel far from our destination. But again, just return to that, the oneness consciousness, the Christ consciousness. Another approach, find gratitude. No matter what is going on in life, no matter what is going on in the world, we can always find at least a sliver of gratitude. And if we focus on that, that gratitude will grow. You know the at least game? Human beings play the at least game. No matter what happens, whatever, if people bring up a problem, well, at least it wasn't dark out. At least you had your cell phone. At least you were in the air conditioning. We do this. I mean, it's a way of finding gratitude, and it works. We do that a lot. But pro tip, when something really dire and tragic has happened to somebody, don't bring up the at least. Just don't do it. You know, somebody says, oh, my cat died. Well, at least you have another cat. No. Some of us learned that the hard way. Good to be a good listener. But we can always find a sliver of gratitude, so nurture it, focus on it, give it attention, and allow it to grow. Another approach, be productive, be of service. Find something that is interesting. Engage in interesting activities. It's just a way of getting outside yourself instead of just focusing on me. Be of service to other people. And this is a way that we can find some purpose and meaning. And purpose and meaning doesn't have to be grand. You don't have to think that you're changing the world. Just tend the space that you're in. Tend your space with care and love and compassion and creativity and energy. So engage the body, mind, and spirit in activities that sustain life and nurture well-being. And that's why community is so important, because I know y'all are doing that here. And last technique I'm going to share, allow time. Allow time. 21 days seems to be important when there's something that you're trying to release, a thought that you're trying to complete. 21 days can be kind of a landmark for change. And in the Bible, 40, the number 40 is important. So Moses fasted for 40 days. The Israelites wandered in the desert for 40 years. Jesus went into the wilderness for 40 days. So it's just kind of symbolic of the time that's needed for completion. Sometimes it takes a whole season. It takes the time that it takes. But with these focused attention, we can kind of get to some completion. So here's an example. Here's a story of somebody completing a thought. And this was a TED Talk by a psychologist named Kelly McGonigal. And she says for 10 years, she taught people that stress is harmful. So for 10 years, she went around saying stress is bad for you. And then she found a new study that showed that it wasn't the stress that was harmful, it was the approach to the stress. It was the thoughts about the stress. So she reconfigured her thinking that stress is just a normal bodily response. Again, you know, the heart starts pounding, the blood flows, it's your body preparing you for action. It's actually helpful. It's your body saying, I'm alert, I'm alive, I'm awake, I'm ready to receive clarity about what is my next best action. And that can be a good thing. She also found that stress leads to sociability. It leads to human connection. So if we will share how we're feeling, if we will ask for help, if we will ask for support, then we're actually building connections and sociability, which is a great thing. So learning to handle stress effectively builds courage, promotes resilience, and actually strengthens the heart. The body chemistry, your body's releasing these hormones and chemicals, and it actually strengthens the heart. So this psychologist changed her old way of thinking. She completed these thoughts about stress is bad and harmful, and she made space for new ways of thinking, new approaches, new ways that she teaches people. So far I've focused on individual thoughts that are going on individually, but this also works at the group level. So families, organizations, sports teams, any kind of group where people gather, they have stories, they have ideas, they have focused attention on thought that perpetuates and keeps those thoughts active. So part of our progression is normally that we start to question these thoughts that we assimilate or these thoughts that we inherit. We start to look at them a lot of times and say, is this really serving me? Is this really something I want to carry forward? Or is this group thought that I've assimilated, is it maybe time for me to balance that, find harmony about it, complete it, not carry it forward? So we want to keep what nurtures and refines our soul, but just release whatever doesn't. And you can imagine, as a culture, we have many conversations that are still active as a society. I mean, just for one example, fuel. There's a lot of conversations about ways to fuel vehicles. And before we started using fossil fuels, people used whale oil. But we've completed conversations about whale oil. We don't talk about whale oil anymore. But there's many conversations ongoing, and I'm not going to get political, but I'm sure you can imagine a lot of conversations that are happening in society, that are happening in the culture, that are alive because we have not completed them. We have not found balance and harmony about those thoughts. So the life cycle of the thought also applies to positive thoughts that are nurturing and well-being. For example, you're not neutral about people you love. You're not neutral about activities that you enjoy. When you're passionate about something, you're not neutral about it. So this life cycle of a thought, it happens with all thoughts. In the Bible, they talk about the peace that passes all understanding. The peace that passes all understanding. And that would be a state of being unattached to any and all thoughts, not having attachment to any thought, just having that complete serenity, balance, harmony about everything and anything. And this is the peace of Zen masters. Their thoughts are balanced, so they're serene. They're not having a lot of active thoughts about anything. So where in your life would you like to experience more balance and more harmony? And what thoughts would you need to complete in order to have that balance and harmony and equanimity in your life? What thoughts can you bring full circle to say, thank you, I've learned what I need to learn, I'm ready to move on, I'm progressing in consciousness, progressing in my awareness. Find gratitude. Thank you for this experience. Thank you for helping me turn my experiences into wisdom that I can hopefully continue to just be more productive in life, more effective as a human being. So again, the thoughts are going to stay active as long as we give them focus, energy, and attention. And when we're ready to complete them, they will dissolve. They will evaporate. The energy will go back where it came from. So what are you harboring that you could release? And how can you better love your whole self and accept the whole of the human experience? Thank you.
Wasn't Shirley lovely? Just absolutely lovely. We love having you each and every time. You bring so much joy, so much clarity, and just very clear, very good, great things.